Great. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
I want to discuss a little bit before your panel.
Yeah.
What do you plan to talk about?
Well, that's a tricky question because I have to comment on what the other guys are doing. But basically, what I want to emphasize is that the panel overall is going to speak, focus on the issues of the IDF capacities to handle future confrontations. And my main point would be that, with all due respect to the military aspects of any future campaign, it is perhaps as important, and I would even dare to suggest perhaps even more important, how the civilian front in the next conflict will behave and what will be happening under the future expected circumstances, what's going to happen there. And I am going to suggest that whereas we are pretty confident that the IDF is preparing itself properly, hopefully, for an eventuality of a future conflict, I think that the home front, the civilian home front, is much less prepared for that, and it's going to be a major issue, a major challenge for us to stand up to the threats that we recognize, that we foresee, and that we have to be prepared for.
And do you think that the northern front, that the communities up in the north are less protected than we have in the south? Because in the south, every 5 meters you can find a bomb shelter.
You're absolutely right that in suggesting that the southern front, after the 3 rounds in the last 10 years between us and Hamas, they are better prepared than any other sector, geographically or otherwise, in the country. And I wish that we could learn from what has been developing and achieved in what we call Otef Aza, the settlements and the localities around the Gaza Strip, to ameliorate what has been achieved there to the rest of the country. And because my point is that it's not only the northern front that we have to be concerned about, because in future confrontation, there is no doubt, and this is the official forecast of the government and the military in Israel, that the entire country, all the populated areas, including exactly where we are sitting presently, are going to be targeted by long range, some of them statistical and some of them also accurate high trajectory weapon systems like rockets and missiles. So the problem would be the big issue is how we are prepared, or perhaps not sufficiently prepared, for such an eventuality. And again, what I'm saying is, that's my point, which I'm going to raise in my panel, that I think that we are far from being properly prepared for such an eventuality.
And what kind of advice can you give to the civilians to prepare themselves? You can have, again, the operations that we've had in the past with Hamas. There have been rockets landing here in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and from also Hezbollah have landed here. But are rockets really the main threat that we have to prepare for?
First of all, I think that rockets and missiles are the number one issue, number one challenge, no doubt about that, in terms of the capacity to cause damage, severe damage, very high magnitude, much more than we were used to before in the last 4 encounters, the one with Hezbollah and the 3 with the Hamas. So this is a major issue. We might have some other, challenges, but this is definitely the most serious one, because we have to understand that we have, with those, rockets and missiles, we have several challenges. Number one, of course, for the civilian population and the civilian concentration of people all around the country. Number two, we have to be very concerned about the critical infrastructure, particularly the electric grid, which is definitely threatened by such. And the number, perhaps also airports, harbors, communication systems, etc. And the last thing, of course, is also the military bases that are also being exposed to such a threat. So it's a big issue, it's a major issue, and again, I'm suggesting that whereas the military hopefully is in a position to prepare itself adequately, we are not there as far as the civilians are concerned. So you asked me what can be done about that. I don't think it's the responsibility of the average person or people in the street. It's the number one is responsibility of the government, and the government has to take responsibility, has to do something about it. And the problem is, and we see it very clearly, that we don't have a home front strategy. We don't have a home front national plan. We don't have the organization to manifest, any kind of responsibility. The cooperation between the different first responders is not strong enough. So we have major issues up at the front, up at the top of the, governmental hierarchy that we have not solved as of now. And as long as this has not been settled and people are not really starting to work on those issues very seriously, what do you expect from the, from the people, from the regular people? They like the present situation. There are no problems right today, hopefully not tomorrow and the day after, but this is exactly the responsibility of the government to see to it that we are safe, even if there is another conflict, and even if our adversaries are able to produce what we expect them to produce in terms of severe damage to our, country. And I am afraid that we are not in a very good situation in this respect.
I just have one last question. You touched about the electrical grid. And part of our critical infrastructure are our energy rigs out on the sea. And are those protected enough? Because that, when one is hit, Israel is really going to be struggling.
Well, we have prepared a very thorough report about 2 years ago about the electric grid and the insufficient level of protection that it has versus this threat of the missiles and rockets. And we suggested that it is not protected, not properly protected. This issue has not been solved at all. We have also contacted the Ministry of Energy and other responsible agencies in the government, and I think that there is a beginning of an understanding that this has to be attended to very seriously on a long-range program, of course. And I hope that it really brings a major change. But if you ask me what's the situation as of today and in the next few months, in the foreseeable future, we're still far from being protected properly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.